What's an NSFW fact about history that we don't get to hear too often? The dildo was created almost 1500 years before the wheel. Mary Toft put baby rabbits in her vagina and then pretended to give birth to them to confuse doctors. The actual death of Ratcliffe, you know, the oddly proportioned villain from Pocahontas? From the Encyclopedia Virginia, greater than the colonists, led by Captain John Ratcliffe, walked into an ambush. About 33 men, or two-thirds of their number, were killed. The Indians captured Ratcliffe, and their women skinned him alive using mussel shells. In 1488, an Italian noblewoman, Catarina Sforza-Riario, locked herself in a castle to save herself from her enemies. Her enemies managed to capture her children and threatened to kill tgem if she wouldn't surrender. She climbed on ramparts, lifted her skirt to expose her female parts and shouted, "Fools. Don, you see that I can make myself more children?" In colonial America, a guy was arrested and charged because he drew a lewd image of his wife in the snow. Puritans didn't appreciate the art. In Pisa on St. Catherine's Day, students would search for and capture the fattest Jew they could find and demand a ransom of his weight in sweets. Source: The Great Mortality, John Kelly. Read about Captain Cook. He discovered Hawaii. They docked offshore right at harvest time. The natives thought they were fertility gods and sent their women in canoes to the ship. The crew had a blast year after year, until the natives figured out what was happening. King Tut's first wife was his half-sister. But she also may have been his full sister and even at one point may have been his stepmother. Witches were more often mutilated than actually burned. A lot of people banged in the White House on the day of Andrew Jackson's inauguration. In ancient Egypt they held a fertility festival each year, and at this festival it was the pharaoh's responsibility to strip down and jerk off into the Nile. Edit. Should also mention that once the pharaoh had finished, men in the crowd were encouraged to step forward and join in, so once a year the Nile River literally tuned into a massive public circle jerk. The deadliest female serial killer in U.S. history had murdered 35 people with an axe by the time she was 18 years old. Romans loved depicting sexual acts. On many everyday items, like oil lamps, combs, bowls, etc., you often see images of people flocking. Like porn but in daily life. In 1511, a bunch of people in Brussels took part in the building of 110 vulgar snowmen as an act of protest at it. It's known as the Miracle of 1511 if you want to know more. Slave owners in the U.S. had a health official who would lick slaves to see if their health was of good standing. During wartime, some armies would wipe shit on their spears so that when they slashed enemies they'd get that extra poison damage. You know that one psychologist guy, Freud? Well, one time he was tasked with finding the testicles of an eel, so he got literally hundreds of eels so he could find their balls. Nowadays we know eels have retractable testicles, but Freud didn't know that, so he cut up hundreds of eels looking for their testicles. Pope Alexander VI might have held orgies where he kept track of men's orgasms while he held the position of pope, and also definitely had an infidelity fetish, especially with women whose wedding he'd officiated. He had 4 kids with one married noblewoman, and at least another 3 to 5 outside of that.